But this sermon will be preached with great warmth and affection. That's the most important element I want to try to convey to you today. But I'm going to begin with three absolutely fascinating institutional developments. And they range around the world. And none of them are Unitarian Universalists. The first is, have you heard about the new phenomenon that's springing up on the internet and in local restaurants called death cafes? Written up in the New York Times this summer. And you can go online, just type in, Google in death cafes. From Brisbane, Australia, to New York, to San Francisco, all around the world, there are springing up groups of people that come together. They don't know each other. They just meet at a local restaurant or cafe or bar, and they sit and they talk about their mortality. And they do it in a kind of lighthearted way. They sometimes serve cake with little skulls in the icing. And they just share their stories, their doubts, their wonderments. And they say, we can't find any place in society nowadays to talk about these things. And so we're going to create this place, this spot to speak our mind and heart for ourselves. The second was written up in both Salon.com and the Daily Beast. And I know it's true because I read it on the internet. Hundreds of people line up once a month in East London to enter the fastest growing church in the world. As they go in, and they're largely young, kind of hip people, they pass a banner that says, live better, help often, and wonder more. And this is a self-proclaimed godless church. It's called Sunday Assembly. It's started by two young stand-up comedians. And this is their mission statement: to solace worries, provoke kindness, and to inject a bit more whizziness into the world. And they use humor and pop music and science and uplift, and they reflect what sometimes is called the new atheism. The old atheism was sort of cranky rationalists wanting to stay home and smoke a pipe. The new atheism is different. The new atheists say, wait a minute, I don't believe in God, but how come religious people have all the fun? They get together, they get coffee, they get to sing, they get to support each other when they're ill, they take care of each other when they die. Why are we missing out on all the good things? In fact, Elaine de Botton, whose book, Religion for Atheists, says, and he's being very intentional about it, he says, it is time for us to raid all the good things from religion. And that's exactly what they're doing at the Sunday Assembly. And they are traveling now all over the world to basically start new places in Australia, and they were just in New York. And believe me, they're going to be franchising someplace near you. Watch out for the expansion. And a little bit closer to home, a third phenomenon. Greg Epstein, the humanist chaplain at Harvard, has been fundraising over $500,000 to hire a church planter that will go all around the country to, and according to a recent New York Times article, quote, help atomized groups of atheists, agnostics, humanists, and freethinkers replicate the communal structure and support that organized religion provides to the faithful. The minister describes it something like this. We were seeing the desire of people who want to connect into a community, and they didn't know how. Wow. Now, I have had many thoughts upon reading and sharing these initiatives. The first is I wish them well. The world needs happier freethinkers, and if they can sing, so much the better. In a world of 7 billion people, There is room enough for everybody. And then the second thing I thought of is that we can take these initiatives, these spiritual pioneers, and see them as signs of hope. Because we also live in a time, and I'm not being rhetorical here, institutional religion is collapsing all around the world. Fascinating article again in the New York Times a couple weeks ago about how, except for the Orthodox, Judaism is seeing precipitous declines in those actually attending temple or synagogue, or even being bar mitzvahed. The Episcopal Church, down by a quarter. The Presbyterian Church, down by a third. Even last year, for the very first time, the Southern Baptists lost people. Well, that's good. So we're living in a time where people, not just young people, but people across the board, have an instinctive allergic reaction to organized religion. And yet, we see these spiritual initiatives springing up. So that should give us hope. And it does. And the third thing I thought of is that the journalists who wrote these articles, these breathless articles, never in any way referenced Unitarian Universalism, the so-called bastion of the free thinker, for 400 years. It was, in fact, as if we did not exist. And the fourth thing I thought of, and it's a launching point to the rest of the sermon, I had the thought, hey, we already exist. There's no need to reinvent us. We're here. We're alive and kicking. There are Unitarian Universalist congregations all around the world. And guess what? Either these folks don't know that we're here, and that's bad news, or they do, and have decided, one, either we've had our time and are therefore irrelevant, or two, that we tried our hardest, and in their eyes we have failed to spark the joyous, free gatherings that they wish to create and are busy doing so. So where does that leave us? From here on in, and I speak as someone who has done this work for 35 years, who speaks with great love and abiding affection for this faith, everything I'm about to say from here on in is nothing but pure, unmitigated opinion. I'm not the Pope. Although, when I was your age, I did play one at the Harvard Divinity School talent show, and I was Pope Ralph Waldo II. It's true. Now, each of these three items could and likely will be a sermon in themselves. But in the short confines of a sermon, it's nice to be concise, and so here goes. If the world doesn't know that we're here, even free-thinking organizers, it's not their fault. It's clearly ours. And in a time of technological breakthroughs, at every breath, the tools are there in our grasp. And that's why I so admire Amy's husband, Peter, who is nice enough to film this for us today. I wish we had 100 more people like you doing that hard work of spreading the message and taking the good news. It matters. I ran into a young visitor to our church at a restaurant a couple weeks ago. He said to me, first, great new website, good job. And then he said to me, and I hope I'm quoting him correctly because I've just seen him walk in, that I really liked visiting your church. And in my time in Boston, it is at your church that I've seen the greatest discrepancy between the quality of what you offer and the way in which you share it with the world. For nearly 200 years, it has been a common historical observation about Unitarians and Universalists that we have been remarkably smug and insular, self-satisfied and quite content with ourselves. In fact, I have to tell you, I love this faith so much that I would love to permanently put that in the cold storage locker forever. Let's take another angle at this. If the world has considered that we have had our run, then it's time, and I would suggest to you that it's now or never, to prove the naysayers wrong. That our energy and our joy in being together can surmount even our own, at times, self-satisfaction. We have a wonderful faith. We have a transcendental message, which Emerson called at time of origins, the American newness. Now that newness pervades our time in even more powerful ways than even in that era. We live in a time where everything is now up for grabs, even the very viability of Earth. And our message still counts, it still resonates. And it's not about the survival of an organization. It's about the world actually needing these free faith principles that we profess every week. No other world faith has proclaimed in its organizing principles the holistic vision of the interdependent web of all being, of all existence. No other church, no other religion, no other faith has brought into its very title its essential message. For the uni of Unitarianism and the uni of Universalism is essentially testifying to the oneness of all, the unity of all that is and all that will ever be. Our spiritual message has always been the canary in the coal mine, and in these fraught times it still is. But if we decide to treasure all these things more or less to ourselves, if we want to take our light, and if we want to huddle in our masses, then who's to blame? I have actually had Unitarian Universalists through the years say to me, you know, we have such a sane, rational religion that I know people are going to come to us. Guess what? They won't. Because we have to go to them. That is the whole essence of what I'm talking about today. We have to open ourselves. We have to proclaim this life-giving love and vision that does not, in fact, belong to us, but rather that we have the responsibility to be emotionally and enthusiastically true to. We have to stop being a denomination and once again find ourselves as a spiritual revolution and nothing less. We need to sing more. We need to sing better. We need to greet much, much more warmly. We need to stop hiding our light under a bushel. And I know Jesus said that. We got to stop worrying about that too. We have to stop worrying about spiritual ideas that in the end actually function to unite us rather than to divide us. We need to stop arguing about the word God, because God is not the name of a person, a big guy in the sky. God is another name for the essential energies that flow through creation, of which we are a part, of which we are the breath, and a voice, and a witness. We don't need to argue about theology. What we need to do is start loving more. We need to stop being coldly rationalistic. We need to warm ourselves up. We need to share our considerable store of whizziness each and every week, no longer making an idol of orders of service or even the old way of doing things. Other folks are happily stealing our mojo, and weirdly, we're letting them. And I want more leaders of this faith, including myself, to put much more on the line, to remember that we are spiritual motivators. We are not ecclesiastical CEOs or denominational politicos. We need to invent new ways of being Unitarian Universalist, of sharing our faith, and we have to stop waiting around for people to come to us and to play by our rules. Because maybe they will, and maybe they won't. But we should never be self-satisfied until we've tried again. New models of worship and outreach. That's why we're trying the sanctuary experiment. We had 65 people the previous birthday night, Wednesday, a couple weeks ago. That's an experiment. We need to continue it. We need to do more. We need to do much more. We've also, and this is the trickiest part of the sermon, and I'm a little cautious in saying it, but I'm going to go ahead and roll the dice on this one. We have sometimes let our causes and enthusiasms and our good intention liberality obscure what we're really here to do and to be. I am very proud of our record on civil rights, on women's rights, gay and lesbian rights, healthcare rights. All that is integral to who and what we are. But sometimes when I've been at denominational gatherings, I have often been left with the question, is that all we are? I'm basing this entire sermon on one very simple premise. That people, even if they're turned off, even if they're allergic to organized religion, I believe fundamentally that they have as much spiritual hunger as they've ever had. That the need for connection and gathering is even greater than it's ever been. So we cannot lose sight of what our essential response needs to be to this spiritual hunger. The response that any spiritual revolution ought to have, which is to meet it, to fill and to fulfill it. To say, now we are ready to hand this religion on to new generations. We love it, but we don't intend to strangle it in our tight grasp. We have to be open to the future, we have to be open to the next generation, and we have to perform with verve and vitality the acts of mercy which show that we are more than an auxiliary to liberal orthodoxy, that we are radiantly in love with this world and with each other, and nothing else will do. Now, I know that I will fail consistently and constantly in totally fulfilling this vision, this vital task. But from here on in, and I swear, I will not choose to forget or to forego its pressing imperative. We still exist. We aren't going anywhere. Free thinkers of the world unite, or rather don't unite. But here's the ticket. Be in partnership, be in conversation, be ready to work together towards this better world where spirituality does not have to divide us, but rather will make this world something whole, something healthy, more holy, ready to thrive. In the end, the survival of First Church or the survival of Unitarian Universalism is not the issue, and it never could be. That's not a big enough vision for us. But you know what is? The survival and the transmission and the transformation of a truly liberating and wondering faith. Amen.